Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Backseat Banter Carpool Edition. My name is Jonathan Silber, one of the hosts of the show, and today I'm joined by a very special guest, Kendall Gammon, a former NFL player who served as a long snapper throughout his career. And you played a little tight end and some backup offensive lineman, but we'll get into that a little bit too. But you really made your mark in the NFL by eclipsing that Pro Bowl mark in 2004. Welcome to the show. It's a pleasure having you on.
Hey, I appreciate you having me on, Jonathan. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, so you won a national championship in college. You were selected to the Pro Bowl in the NFL, and you even competed in the Super Bowl. Talk about how you found your success a little bit at the highest level of football throughout the entirety of your career.
Yeah, you mentioned the national championship, and that was at Pittsburgh State University in Pittsburgh, Kansas. No H on the end of that.
Mm-hmm.
And, when I got there, it was a tradition already started that just involved winning. There in the midst of a regular season win streak. I know during my career, we won 55 straight regular season games.
Wow.
I only practiced after one loss my entire career. So the winning became definitely infectious, as you might imagine. And, fortunately, I'm fast forwarding a little bit, but fortunately drafted by the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now I've got the Pittsburgh with an H. So right off the bat, couldn't say where I was at. Absolutely. You got Myron Cope's terrible towel, by the way, is the person who drafted me, if you want to get into that in a little bit.
For sure.
But, yeah, after college, I was either in Pennsylvania or I was in Kansas, because I could never be in Pittsburgh because people didn't have a clue what the hell was going on. So, yeah, just, I learned at Pittsburgh State early on about goal setting, and it was always our goals to, literally win every game, win conference, get to the playoffs, and win a national championship. And we didn't win all the games, but we won most of them, and we got a national championship. And, I had some individual goals also that I kept to myself a little bit because they were pretty audacious, and they involved getting to the NFL, if we want to talk about that a little bit later as well. But, I've just been always of that mindset that, what you create in your mind, what you believe goes a long ways towards manifesting it in real life. And it's been pretty effective for me my entire life.
Yeah, so you mentioned that you're drafted by a specific person in the Steelers organization.
Yeah.
You want to dive into that a little bit?
Yeah, it's interesting. Going way back for when I was playing, there was 12 rounds, not 7 like there is in modern day. So as you can imagine, those last several rounds aren't real important. Not many people make it out of there. And the Chiefs had a little tradition where they would let Myron Cope make the 11th and 12th round picks. And lo and behold, I was the 11th round pick, and it was he who had drafted me, and not the coaches rather. And that was Coach Cowher's first year actually there with the Steelers. And it's kind of funny. I think they were looking towards it for sure, because the Steelers had missed the playoffs the year before, and Chuck Knowles last year because of a bad snap. So it was kind of on the minds of everybody. But it is kind of unique when you think about it, that a 15-year career, you play in the Super Bowl, you play in a Pro Bowl, and you go on to then also be an announcer for the Chiefs radio network for 13 years. And you got into the league because of Myron Cope drafting you.
Yeah, I mean, you filled the need that they clearly thought they needed.
Right.
And you mentioned Bill Cowher, who is a legendary coach in the Steelers organization. You also played for Mike Ditka in New Orleans. You have any stories regarding them as legends, and any interesting, teaching moments that they might have had with you, or something along those lines?
Yeah, I always credit Coach Cowher for thickening my skin, because this is a very unforgiving profession. You either perform or you perish, and it's a what have you done for me lately? And I'd like to think I was mentally fairly tough, but he really, as I said, thickened my skin. When the snaps weren't in his mind perfect all the time, he was just back there, and you could just his arms would be crossed, and he'd just be like snap, and I still hear that in my sleep every once in a while, and it used to get to me. But it continually made me aware of what I was trying to do. And, I understand this is a rookie head coach, and you've got a rookie snapper you're going to entrust to things too. So, you know what? Fast forward, I think it was year 3 in the playoffs, and I had a snap, a punt snap. It was maybe at the knees. It wasn't awful, but it wasn't my best effort, and I certainly wasn't happy with it. And in the past, anytime there was a snap that wasn't great, Coward always come over there and tell me to go get some snaps and practice. And that's the last thing I want to hear. I understand why he was doing it,
Hmm.
but it's the last thing I wanted to hear. So this time, in the particular time in the playoffs. Uh, I'm sitting on the bench after that, and nothing bad happened. The punt, we punted, we tackled, and life's going on. But I see him out of the corner of my eye making a beeline for me, and I know he's going to tell me to go get snaps. And before he could open his mouth, about 7 yards away, I just got up and looked at him and said, "I know the effing snap was low." And he just kind of laughed at me and walked away, and really never said much to me after that. He knew basically that it mattered
Hmm.
more to me than it did to him, and it certainly mattered a lot to him. So, I think that's something that's very important, and I've always tried to learn a lesson from, which is, ultimately. When you're more responsible and you care more about something than the others who are depending upon it also, that's when you've really gotten to the right point in life, I think.
Yeah, so as a professional, you always want to refine your craft. I mean, us with the podcast, we've been doing this 90 plus episodes and we're still learning things. So I'm sure as your career went on, you're picking up things, and eventually in 2004 you got to the Pro Bowl level. What was it like being the first long snapper selected to play in the Pro Bowl? What was the process like being the pioneer, of the long snappers for the future?
Well, I appreciate the kind words. First and foremost, we'll go back to Cower a little bit because he's the one who added me to the Pro Bowl roster because they'd lost in the AFC Championship game that year, and back then that the losing team would coach in the Pro Bowl, and so he gave me a call. Uh, that week afterwards, maybe the Monday, and I was going to pick up my son at school, and I see this 412 area code, which is I know is Pittsburgh,
Hmm.
and so I answer it, and I hear this hello, and I say hello, and he said, "Kendall, this is Bill Cower." And of course, I can hear that voice in my sleep. I knew it. I said, "Yeah, I know. What are you calling me for?" And he said, "Well, I just wanted to let you know that I've decided to add you to the Pro Bowl roster."
Wow.
And I literally, I think I started crying. In fact, I think, well, I'm doing it right now, actually, which is, I told him, like, you know what, when you let me go into my 5th year, you made me cry then, and you're making me cry again. But thank you. And it was a short conversation, but it was one that was, obviously pretty meaningful, and can't say enough about it. As far as being a pioneer, I appreciate the kind words. There were several of us, but I think I was on the forefront of coming in, even though I was at one point in time 310 pounds, a backup offensive lineman. On my
Hmm.
best day, I might have been average. I was in the league because I could snap and do it at a better level than anybody else. And very proud of that. Tried to take things to the highest level. Tried to be the best in the world at what I was doing. And I think for a while I was. And what's funny is even when you're at that level, Jonathan, in the NFL, you still have a chance to be released for whatever reason. I mean, when they say it's a numbers game, it really is at times. And you have to be in the right place at the right time. And, they always say luck favors the prepared. And I was always prepared in terms of my snapping abilities.
Hmm.
So it was cool. I remember Gary Anderson a few days into camp, realizing that I could do it better than anybody he'd had, and him just coming up and talking to me in that little South African accent that he had, and just wondered if I could snap the balls so the laces were facing out each and every time. And Jonathan, I just remember thinking, what is this guy thinking? I mean, what the hell?
Hmm.
But I was just like, well, I can try. I mean, I've never heard of that before, but I guess it makes sense. And he just explained that, as a kicker, if the ball was sitting down there and he never had to see the laces spin, or he never had to see the laces, or worse yet, he didn't have to kick the laces, Ace
Yep.
Ventura, laces out, Dan, then he would, it would allow him to be more successful, have a higher field goal percentage. Again, made sense. So, I got my holder and punter, Mark Royals, and we just started working on it and working on it and working on it. And, after a couple of days, I started doing it pretty well,
Wow.
and it just kind of went from there. And I think I'm one of the few guys early on that was doing that at that level consistently. And it does make a difference. There's no doubt about it for the kickers. They appreciate it.
Yeah, it for sure saves them, that minuscule amount of time, which can allow
Yeah,
them to either make it or, uh, be successful. And you said it, it's like a difficult league to be successful in because they're asking, what can you do for me? And if a kicker looks bad, it looks bad on you. So
right.
you make sure that everything goes smoothly, and that's crazy. I didn't even know that. You how is the process in timing the ball so that the laces go right in the way as
Yeah. So I've, the big thing was I would snap and they'd tell me where the laces were or show me, and I just decide whether I needed to spin it a little bit more or a little bit less. And I finally got to a happy medium where by the end of my career, it was probably not, it was either 99 out of 100 or maybe 100 out of 100. It just got to where that's one thing I could still do in my sleep right now. I certainly can't run down the field anymore, or at least not the way I used to. But it's one thing that I just honed and honed and honed, and it came about, and it made a big difference.
Yeah. So Sam is joining us, one of my co-hosts. Thank you,
Yeah. Hey,
Sam.
Sam.
Hi, sorry I was late. I was stuck in the research lab.
All good.
Yeah, so we were just talking about what it takes to be a Pro Bowler and refining your craft. But I wanted to talk a little more, Kendall, about what did it feel like to go back to Kansas City to play for your team for 7 years and finish your career there. What did that mean for you? Not only as a football player, but as a person. Like, what was the experience like? Because we know that when you go somewhere, you always gain something from it. We
Right.
want to know, not only in a football standpoint, but as a person. What did that mean for you?
Well, I came full circle because I remember my senior year going up with a friend to Kansas City to see my first Chiefs game. And I remember walking around the stadium, it hadn't opened yet. And Prince's America was playing on a loudspeaker. I'll never forget it. And I remember audibly out loud telling myself, I'm gonna play here someday. And to then come back to that same stadium, Arrowhead,
Mhm.
and be able to finish my career, the last 7 of my 15 years, uh, was unbelievably special for so many different reasons. Now you had family around, you're established in the league, you're in the area that you generally think you want to settle. My boys were now going to be there as well. They were, at the time when I came there, they were what, 4-1 or 5-2, something like that, 4-1, I think. And just playing there for 7 years, 5 of those under Vermeil, 1 under Herm Edwards. Those last 6, when we won games, we were allowed to bring our boys into the locker room afterwards. So I've got
Mhm.
pictures of the boys on the field with me. I've got pictures of them actually walking out on the Pro Bowl field with me also, just
Wow.
to let them experience it. And so being able to play in what was my hometown, in a sense, even though I'm from Wichita, home state, hometown boy, have my boys out there with me at times, and them be old enough to remember it.
Mhm.
It's all just very, very special. It's a beautiful thing. It's where I settled, and then to take a year off and then be on the Chiefs radio network for 13 years, 9 on the sideline, 3.5 on the up in the booth, and my last game being calling last year's Super Bowl win against the 49ers. I have to pinch myself sometimes because it's been a surreal experience at times.
So, what was that transition like going from being a player to covering the team?
It was okay. I had the year buffer in between.
Mhm.
I tried to stay away from everything because, as we always joke, we have our 15 minutes of fame. I had my 15
Mhm.
years of fame, and there was a new long snapper there, JP Darsh, just a good dude. And so I tried to always stay out of the locker room, even that year, even though I was welcome because I was very, very tight with the equipment staff and just the folks up there, as you might imagine.
Mhm.
But then coming back and being able to be back on the sideline and in my reporting and dealing with the travel that I'd done for 15 years, it was really nice because when you leave the NFL, people don't realize how difficult it can be. I mean, essentially, for me, I was 15 years behind everybody else because they had started in their profession
Yep.
when I came into the NFL. And, granted, we're paid well and you hope you take care of it. And I really did. But I remember trying to figure a way out of the NFL the minute I got in, not because I wanted out, but because I knew it was going to be a day that would come. Fortunately, it was my decision. The Chiefs did ask me to come back to camp my 16th year. And I just told them that I think it was time for me. So I'm one of the very few who didn't part on bad terms with the team. I wasn't mad because I was injured or that they messed me around or any other things. It was simply my decision. They moved on. They were okay with it, obviously, as well. I mean, it's the NFL shield. It goes on long after a player's career is over. But it was just I was getting at it. It's tough when you retire from the NFL because all your time is so spoken for, and you live in terms of the season and the off season, which I continued to do, which was kind of cool and made it very nice. But it's difficult. I do a podcast just like you all. I do a YouTube show as well, and here just recently I spoke with Eric Hicks, who was a teammate of mine and really had some issues after football with alcohol, with mental side of things, with his body and his injuries. And that's not unique to a lot of players in the NFL. They deal with a lot of different things. So for me to have that continuity to be on the Chiefs radio broadcast was really a blessing.
How's the podcast went? We started during the pandemic, so we've slowly built this thing to something that we are really proud of. But how is the experience for you as a former player and the connections that you have?
Doing the podcast?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great because what I found out during my career was that I did take care of my relationships, and most everybody that I ask are okay to come on, and they're pretty forthright, pretty revealing, and I do it hopefully to not only maybe make a difference with them if they need it, but more so to make a difference with others, to try to bring them into what was our normal world, but a world that was always closed off to them, and try to inspire folks with the type of mindset and routines that we had as NFL players to do something at the highest level, to sacrifice your body, to deal with stress, to deal with anxiety, all those different things, doing some of it successfully, doing it, some of it not so successfully. And that's why I do what I do. I mean, these types of things, my podcast, my YouTube, my social media, it's all about emotional communication, emotional strengths, and relationships and relationship building. Because ultimately, I think that's the most important thing in life is how do you deal with people? If you can deal with people, I think you've got a chance to be successful. If you can't, it's going to be difficult.
Yeah, and would you say that? So we were looking into your whole line of work, and you've written 2 books.
Yes.
Life's a Snap, Building on the Past to Improve Your Future, and also Game Plan, Leadership Lessons from the Best of the NFL. How much of that wisdom that you just talked about, building on the relationships, working with other people, did you put into those books? Can you talk about that a little bip?
Yeah, the second one, Game Plan, has a lot about that because in it I interviewed different guys that I've been around. Jap Del Rio, who was a coach of mine at New Orleans. I've got Coach Vermeil in there. I've got some players like Trent Green, the late Kevin Green, who just passed here a while back. Tony Richardson. It goes on and on. Kevin Mawai, NFLPA president, Hall of Famer, and a few others. And I just tried to share as much as possible, to be as candid as possible. And that's not always easy because I had a gun in my hands when I was 16 years old. I was abused from age 10 on, emotionally and physically, and by my mother. And those are things nobody would have ever known. If you look at me from the outside, it's a national champion at Pittsburgh State, drafted 15 years in the NFL, beautiful family, yada, yada, yada. But the fact is, I'm no different than anybody else. And I want people to understand that, because I think oftentimes we get placed on a pedestal, or we place people who are in more high profile roles on a pedestal when ultimately they're no different. And that's why I speak candidly on the things that I do. And that's why I try to inspire to help people in whatever shape, in whatever way, shape, and form that I can.
Yeah, it's very powerful when you're trying to spread awareness and using your own story, which obviously it's very unfortunate. And we at Backseat Banter, we took that to heart when we saw that, because we did see that when were doing a lot of research on you. And we've spoken to several NFL players in the past, and we know just we have that different perspective of that they're not just these idols that you can
Right.
worship because they played in the league. They're players, they have stories, they have so much that we don't know, and so much goes on in their personal lives that we don't see on a daily basis. And being able to do this on a podcast has really opened the light and showed me that these aren't just beings that we look up to. They are
Right.
people. And that's what we try and do on this podcast. We try and show the people who listen that you're just not a football player. You're so much more than that. And
Right.
clearly, what you've been able to do throughout your career and even after you retired from the NFL is amazing. And we, Sam and I, were really, really impressed when we saw the work that you've been doing since you retired.
Well, I appreciate the kind words. I've always said football is what I do. It's not who I am. And if you just indulge me a minute, April 17th, 2005, I wrote my life mission statement. And it goes like this: I will inspire everyone to identify and appreciate people and values in life. I will demonstrate to all that it's okay to be vulnerable, and that it's actually power that helps break down obstacles in life. Real people aren't perfect. I will allow all to not only see, but know the real me. I will touch people positively long after I've left this earth, and I will help all realize that they're not defined by what job they may have, but by the emotions they may stir. And all five of those principles in my life mission statement have nothing to do with anything physical. They're all emotional.
Mhm.
They're all about making a difference. They're all about communication and dealing with people one to one in groups and whatever it may be. And not to say that somebody who has a life mission statement that involves some physical things is wrong. It's not.
Mhm.
It's what I've chosen to do. That was a very pivotal time in my life when I wrote that mission statement, and I try to live by it. And I think if you guys did check out some of my work, which I have no doubt you did, I believe you obviously, then you would know that what I just told you is basically manifested in what I'm doing out
Mhm.
there on my social media and some other things that I've got planned as well.
Yeah. So
Yeah, it's really beautiful, man.
Thank you.
can you tell the people a little bit, because Sam and I've done our research, but the people listening might not know the current work that you're doing out there. Can you just shed light on that a little bit?
Yeah, well, I've got my YouTube channel, so I've got my show. So when I do these shows with folks, you can see it from a video standpoint, and we have some B-roll in there, so you can get into their lives visually as well. I do that. I turn that into a podcast as well, and then I have those cut up into little kind of learning snippets, anywhere from 30 seconds to a minute, that will go on either Facebook, which is at Kendall Gammon, Twitter, which is also at Kendall Gammon. I think the LinkedIn is at Kendall Gammon, and then Instagram is at Kendall Gammon 83. Why I had to put the 83 on there, I don't know. I mean, it was my number, but I didn't stay true to everything else. But yeah, I have those things going on. I'm working on a kind of a small book, third one, which is about writing your life mission statement. And I try to throw in some of my
Mhm.
stuff. And, I'm fortunate enough to speak all around the US. And of course, that's been tough this year with COVID,
Yep.
Mhm.
which is a whole another issue, obviously, from the isolation we deal with and how the toll that it's taken on people. But
Mhm.
it's all those little things that I'm trying to do. And then, really open to anything else that we can come up with. But, I just want to help people in whatever way I can. When I speak to folks, I think it's a little bit unique because if you're going to hear my keynote, we're going to juggle. We're going to learn to juggle. You're going to see me juggle balls, clubs, rings, and bowling balls. I've juggled center ring at Ringling Brothers twice. I've competed nationally in an under 18. I mean, all kinds of things. I mean, hell, if I'm a long snapper, I'm doing some other weird things also. But it's a lot of fun. I try to create anchors for folks. I mean, I think it was Socrates who said, "I cannot teach anyone anything. I can only make them think." And goes on to say that learning is remembering. And really, I'm a believer that most everything has been said. It's just how you say it in a way, hopefully, that will make others think and they can remember it on a daily basis when it might come in handy.
Yeah. You were talking about how right now it's especially difficult with COVID to reach out to people to communicate, but also you're able to channel that in the podcast, because that is a way that you could reach as many people without having to be there. And a lot of people right now especially are turning to sports, to podcasts as an outlet, so they don't have to be over analyzing the real world. They can kind of escape into podcasting. They can live through those experiences while they're not able to have their own right now. What are your thoughts right now? The Kansas City Chiefs are headed to their second Super Bowl in a row. Okay, well, let's talk about that a little bit.
Well, it's fabulous. I mean, if you watch the game, I don't think it was ever really in doubt. Patrick Mahomes is special. I was fortunate enough to do the first interview in the locker room in Denver after his first start. And the guy is what you think he is. He is authentic and he is real, and he is a kind person. He's a driven person. And he's just got so many different things, so many it's about him that it's amazing, and it's so much fun to watch. And he is a true leader. I mean, everything he does it in the right fashion. He's humble, he's kind, and he inspires people to follow him, which I think is great. And this Chiefs team, I mean, it is a dynasty in the making, I think. I mean, they're really one coin flip away from possibly being in their third Super Bowl and possibly winning their third Super Bowl in a row. They didn't, but you have to admit that it was close there. So it's going to be interesting to watch. I mean, this is the GOAT versus possibly the future GOAT. And it's going to be one for the ages, I think.
Yeah. Have you ever played in a game against Tom Brady, the guy on the other side, and were like taken away by what he was able to do at the QB position? Or
you know what? I've played against him several times, obviously. I don't remember not being impressed, but I don't remember being impressed also. Probably more so watching him handle himself over at the Pro Bowl in 2005 when I went over there, he and Peyton, and just how they dealt with things. That was probably more where I was a little bit more impressed with things. But I mean, I'm not going to say I'm not impressed. I mean, six Super Bowl wins. You're now going to your 10th championship game. You're doing it with a team that wasn't in the playoffs last year, I believe, or maybe they were in the first round. I forget.
They missed it last year.
Yeah, they missed it last year. I mean, that's really, that on a separate note, that's what the NFL is about. The NFL sells hope in the fact that you can be terrible one year and not be in the Super Bowl, not be in the playoffs. The next year you're in the Super Bowl. It happens, obviously, and that's one of the many beautiful things about the NFL. But Tom Brady's amazing. Number one, to do it as long as he has at the level that he has, and to really keep up the desire, because at year 15, for me, it was getting to be enough. I had done it a long time. That's a long time to do anything, let alone, snap a ball and get the crap knocked out of you. So I commend him for so many different things.
Yeah. So are you going with the Chiefs, like undoubtedly as the heavy favorites in this matchup, or is the bias not kicking in here?
There's probably hometown bias. There has to be, but I do, even if I try to get out of that, I do think, I think Tampa's defense may be better than the Chiefs. I'm not sure on that one. but I think the offense of Kansas City is heads and tails above Tampa Bay's. Now, losing Eric Fisher at the left tackle spot is a big deal. So you're only going to have one of the 5 starters from the team last year, and they've been makeshift the whole year. But you give 2 weeks to Andy Reid, and he'll design anything, I think, to make things work. So I think the opening line was either 3 or 3.5.
Yeah.
I'm still personally think the Chiefs have a chance to win by 7 or more. I thought they were going to run away with the Buffalo game. The line of 3 on that I didn't think was right at all. But that being said, I thought Green Bay would win by double digits. So clearly 50%. I can just close my eyes and point and do it. But I am a Chiefs fan, and I do believe the Chiefs will win.
Yeah, before this past game this Sunday, I was having a conversation with Sam saying don't bet against Tom Brady, blah blah blah. And we have 2 other co-hosts as well. They couldn't make it today, but we were just chatting about it, and I was the only one to say Tom Brady. And we did some polls on Twitter as well, and our fans said they gave Tampa Bay a 25% chance at winning this game. So they were considered the underdogs a little bit, but it's Tom Brady. You can't really bet against this guy, even if they are going against the Chiefs. I think it's going to be a really, really interesting game, if not close, interesting.
Yeah,
Either way.
what I think finds interesting is, I mean, let's not forget if Green Bay had found a way to win, the narrative would be Tom Brady threw 3 interceptions in the second half. And is that GOAT like? Now, I mean, he still is, and he did a great job. And what he did in the first half was phenomenal. But I think it gets overlooked a little bit when you see what happened in the second half. I mean, he single-handedly almost let them back in the game. I think if not for the defense, they would have been in real trouble. But again, I will say this: some of the things he did in the first half amazed me, and he drove some balls in there a few times with more arm strength than really I thought he had.
Well, the NFL and all these leagues are all about the stories. They try to sell, like you said, a vision, a hope, something going forward. And you're right. If they lost a game, it would be, let's talk trash about Brady. Now it's let's hype him up. I mean, he is, if nothing else, probably the most successful player to play the game. Right. You want to talk about talent or anything otherwise, but he's found the most success on the field. But it's interesting to hear how the stories would be different if the outcome of the game was slightly different too. And a lot of the stories, and we have to admit, it is driven by this industry, right? People talking about sports. Let's talk about your podcast a little bit more. I know we went away from that to talk about the upcoming Super Bowl matchup, but what's the message that you really try to spread on that show?
Well, my podcast is called The Extra Point with Kendall Gammon, and I try to get into the psyche of my guest in terms of how they got to the level they got to. What they were thinking, was their goal setting, were they writing them down? I do 2 smaller segments also that I cut up into pieces. One's called The Power of Gratitude, because I'm a big believer in the fact that gratitude is the rawest of emotions and the most important emotion. I mean, if you're not thankful for things in general, you're going to have a rough time. And the other one is about Make a Difference, where, I talk to folks about some of the things they're doing in the community and how they're making a difference, or even how people have made a difference in their lives. And I just try to have an open and honest, a real conversation with some folks like you guys do very much, which is that maybe people wouldn't have a chance to talk to. I did my very first one was with an F-18 pilot who was a Top Gun instructor. Now, to get into the NFL is pretty rare, and you're beating the odds, but nothing like being a Top Gun instructor and an F-18 pilot. And when we say we're in battle in the NFL, no, we're just playing a game. When they're in battle in an F-18, I mean, it's life or death. So things like that were interesting. I actually I did an interview just recently with Mark Hittner, who was in his 24th year as a head linesman in the NFL. He actually did the NFC Championship game this week in Green Bay, and probably he and I'll have lunch again this week. Just by chance, he happens to be a Pittsburgh State Gorilla. I think we now have 3 Pittsburgh State Gorillas that are reffing in the NFL, and that is amazing to me. I don't know that there's even any universities that have 2. I know we have 2. I think the third one came in this year. But and I should mention also, by the way, that I'm the assistant to the president of Pittsburgh State, so you're going to see me throw the Gorillas in as much as possible. But guys like that. I recently just did a piece with Will Shields, a teammate of mine, and we talked about a lot of different things. This is a guy who is remarkably deep in his thinking and his regard for mankind and what he can do. He was the Walter Payton Man of the Year, the highest honor. I think that was way back in either 2000. I think it was 2005. And just getting into the psyche, I've got one coming out here in a week or so. I'll probably release it this week with Barry Dean. He's a Nashville country music writer. He's written 4 number ones. He's written over 1,500 songs. He and his brother just released software and equipment for power wheelchairs. These wheelchairs for the disabled that cost $75,000 or $80,000 a piece. They developed smart technology for those that's never existed before. They were a Time Top 100 Invention of the Year, CES Invention of the Year. What else? Popular Mechanics. It goes on. And so it's just things like that, and how they got that, and what it took to get there, and what they were thinking when they were facing really some dire odds, when everybody was telling them, no, you can't do this. And so I just try to come up with those things. I try to lend my opinion to it a little bit as well, as much as possible. And I just think it's a fun endeavor. And I hope when we cut it up, so that some people who can't or won't take the time to watch 15 minutes to an hour or something, which I understand, well, maybe they will watch 30 seconds or 45 seconds where there's one little lesson taught in there that they just happen to see on social media. And ultimately, as I say, if you treat people like they matter, well, then they do matter. And this world just becomes a little bit better place. And really what I'm trying to do is treat people like they matter and meet them wherever I can. So maybe they can get something that will help them in their day-to-day life. And maybe then allow them to want to move on and help somebody else as well.
Yeah. So I had a question about your podcast specifically. When did you start it? And was it during the pandemic that led you to start the podcast? And
I really just started moving things to the podcast in the last 4 weeks. I started doing the extra points, the video side of it, about this time last year, just a little bit. I did 3 or 4 episodes before the pandemic really hit. And then we paused for a while and then started doing some things again, and have done quite a few recently. But so I'm not as far into it as you all are. I think I've got 19 in the can, but I think I've only released 5 or 6. I'll release the Barry Dean one here soon. I'll release another one here soon, which I think people will find interesting because it's with Gene Bicknell, who started National Pizza Company, and they were once the largest owner of Pizza Huts in the world. And this is a guy who's just done all kinds of different things. And again, I'm just trying to be eclectic. It's not all sports. Not that that's wrong, but I'm just trying to go all over the place and teach people. But yeah, back to your question, haven't been doing the podcast side of it, releasing it for very long.
Yeah. So how has the pandemic affected the process? Because you started off doing it before the pandemic, and now you have 19 plus episodes stashed away. How does that affect, meeting over Zoom or getting different guests that you normally wouldn't have gotten?
Yeah, like Morton Anderson is a teammate of mine, and Morton's, let me know that he's holing up until he gets his vaccine. That's good enough. He does a podcast and he does everything by Zoom. I prefer to be in person with him. So I'm waiting on somebody like that. I was fortunate enough to be a guest of his at his Hall of Fame induction 3 years ago, and I want to be in person with him when we do our interview. So it's things like that. Some people just aren't into it. I just really kind of paused it for quite a while. And then when some of the things loosened a little bit, there were just some people who were okay if we did it, if we were socially distanced enough, and they felt safe, and I felt safe. And so we did some that were somewhat, they were in person, but distance a little bit. And it's been okay. To each his own. Everybody's got a different, I guess, take on everything that's going on. Obviously it's real. When I say that, different people just have different safety levels that they're comfortable with. But
100%.
to be quite honest, it just really completely put it on pause for me for quite a while.
Yeah, see, we actually took the opportunity to record over Zoom because we
Yeah.
are a smaller show. We have a lot fewer connections. So it made it actually easier for us to reach out to people and meet new people. And we feel extremely blessed to be able to do this the way that we're doing it. I don't think when we started, we thought we would be here speaking to someone like you. So that's really wonderful that we've been able to grow this. But we took it kind of as not necessarily a positive, because obviously there's a lot of bad that comes from it, but we try to make the best of the bad situation.
Absolutely.
And try to grow what we can do. And then eventually, hopefully, transition to doing something more traditional in person. But while we have, while we're forced to do it, I'd rather make the most of it. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. But I'm a big proponent of the fact of, we have the ability to assign whatever meaning we want to whatever it is. And just because we may assign some positive to what's going on in the world in terms of how we're dealing with things, doesn't mean we believe COVID's a good thing. It's just that we're seeing what positive we can and get out of it. And basically that enhances our life. When you look at things, I think generally in a negative way, then that's ultimately what I think you're going to manifest. And what you just told me is you looked at what you had, the environment you had to deal with, you found the positive and you exploited it for what it was, which I commend you for. Everybody should be doing stuff like that. Not that COVID's good, obviously, but you can't put life on hold for anything, I don't think.
Yeah, we at Backseat Banter didn't do that. Sam and I started a podcast the year before that, and we're in college, so it got a little busy. So we put that on pause and then came back to it, and it's been extremely successful due to the ability that we can communicate over Zoom is a large part of that, because you're God knows how many miles away from us. We probably wouldn't have been able to sit down with you in person if we were doing this in person. So it has opened the doors for so many creators like Sam and I to be able to get in touch with people like you, hear your stories, and share that with our audience as well. So it's really opened the doors for so many possibilities that I really didn't imagine this leading into. So it's really been a ride. Again, we thank you for joining us on this episode. Give our viewers one more chance to let them know where they can find you and what you're doing with your podcast. And
yeah, all my social media is at Kendall Gammon, with the exception of Instagram, which is at Kendall Gammon 83. And then my YouTube channel is at Kendall Gammon as well. So pretty simple there. My website is kendallgammon.com. You can go on there and see some things. I speak all over. Obviously, it's been on hold here recently, but getting back into that. And, I want to thank you all for having me on. I commend you for what you're doing, and kudos. I think you said 90 plus episodes. That's fabulous. Unbelievable. And all your listeners out there, I appreciate you all. I appreciate the fact that you would tune in and want to listen and see what we have to say and see what we have to share.
We're honored, and thank you again for taking this time. It means the world to Sam and I. Everybody listening at home, if you are listening on Spotify or Apple, please consider leaving a rating. It would be greatly appreciated. Go check us out on Instagram at backseat.banter and at Twitter at bbpodofficial. It has been a pleasure again, Kendall Gammon. Thank you so much for joining us. Backseat Banter out.